So, what a brilliant start. Layla spoke to us all about coaching, and obviously, coaching is a really great way to ensure that professional development is attuned to staff need. But actually, in order for coaching to be effective, we have to first create the right culture and climate for learning to take place. And I'm delighted now to welcome Kate Hall, who's Director of Education at Hales Valley Trust. And Kate will be speaking exactly about this, about developing a professional learning culture. So again, if you've got any questions at all for Kate, please do leave them in the chat in whatever social media you are using for this live stream, and we'll pick them up at the end. Hi, Kate. How are you?
Very well, thank you. Thank you for having me.
No, thank you so much for coming. I'm really excited to hear what you're going to be chatting about. So I'll leave you to it. Thank you.
Thank you. And again, thanks for having me. It was really interesting to hear Layla's presentation, and you will hear some common messages coming through when I talk to you. I'm going to share with you how our all primary trust has developed a professional learning culture underpinned by the use of coaching and the use of Iris. Now, I've decided to talk you through the process right from the beginning of the implementation to where we are now. So we began our journey really by thinking about how adults learn. It was really important that we've done a lot of research on how children learn, and it was important that we engaged in research on how adults learn to maximise our professional learning culture. So we applied the basic principles of how adults learn and used this to impact on our coaching strategy. We found that most adults are autonomous and wanted to be in control of their own learning. And as individuals and as we mature, we find that this motivation is driven from an internal desire, so from intrinsic motivations. So, based on basic assumptions that underpin this, we had to devise a professional learning culture where the adults were motivated to learn, not because they weren't good enough, but because they could be even better. So with the end in mind, I think it's always important that we start with the end in mind. So when I'm talking, you can keep it in context. So as you know, teaching is complicated. And as an all primary trust, we needed to provide staff with the tools and strategies to be the best that they could be. As a trust, our intent is always to improve the quality of teaching across our schools. As we know, there are no improvements of pupil outcomes without improvement in teaching. And there's no improvements in teaching without effective professional development. So over a period of time, I've worked to develop a programme of professional development that would develop our staff and the quality of teaching using research-informed strategies that would impact on our children in the classroom. So the current model that I'm going to share with you is for almost 100 members of staff. So that's teaching staff, PPA staff, HLTAs are all part of this process across our school. All of these staff have at least a half-termly coaching session where they share an Iris recording linked to a focus from our Hales Valley teaching rubrics, underpinned by a deliberate selection of a teaching walkthrough. And within the coaching session, the member of staff is coached by a trained leader using models such as Grow or Clear to help them move further forward. A coaching culture has really developed across our schools, but not just in formal lessons. We use it in corridors, classrooms, staff rooms, and meetings. So the coaching culture, so where did we start? Well, since 2016, leaders have worked really hard to build and sustain this coaching culture across our schools. This year, we've codified the approach so that there's a quality of provision and opportunities of professional development for all staff in all of our schools. So coaching really is at the heart of our trust, and it's worked hand in hand with Iris Connect. So as coaches, we are believers that individuals possess huge potential to resolve their own issues. And as such, the coachee remains responsible for the situation and the solutions. This ensures ownership over actions and next steps, and the accountability stays with the coachee to move forward and improve. So in summary, the coach is involved in the content, so is in control of the content. The coach is in control of the process and the coachee is in control of the content. And within our trust, we develop coaching so that professional development is about helping coaches to learn rather than teaching them. And this way, the coaching focuses on future possibilities and treats past failures as learning experiences, growing a low threat professional development process. Now, Iris has allowed this to happen with staff having the opportunity to record, reflect, and re-record if they choose to, so that they can move further forward. We found that recording not only provides low threat, but once staff have gotten over what they look like or what they sound like, they actually enjoy watching their video, commenting on the techniques that they've used on the Iris platform, and some even re-recording to polish or perfect something that they evaluated as not being good enough. So our journey started, well, it started a while ago where we trained leaders to be effective in coaching. This was really important as our starting point. We started when the head teacher and I engaged in the power of coaching. Some of you may have come across that through a Levy. And we came back excited and started modelling those coaching strategies. And it didn't take long for our skilled and competent leaders and staff to start querying, why do we never get an answer? Why are we always posed with a question or a thunk to consider? And over a period of time, we developed an understanding of what coaching was, but most importantly, what it wasn't, being clear to distinguish the difference between coaching, teaching, mentoring, and counselling. We then modelled this, explicitly practicing coaching informally in meetings, corridors, staff rooms, and the interest started to spread. It became infectious. And once we'd modelled the skills of coaching, we were then able to make the invisible visible. We were able to model coaching techniques and coaching models to staff. We began talking and explaining and labelling what we were doing, and others began to do the same. This then caused a buzz where staff wanted to find out more. It shifted the culture from direct instruction and teacher talk into more facilitation and coaching. So within 3 years, the school became a flagship school, recognised as a Levy as a centre of excellence in coaching. We had advocates across the school, all trained, and we also facilitated that training for others in our trust schools. It was at this point that we were in a position to formalise coaching and the use of Iris. And it was paramount that the coaching was a process where staff felt safe to talk, explore, but also be challenged before we were able to move forward with the video technology. So initially we developed a coaching model. So we introduced tutorial time and guidance of what this would look like. And during the tutorial time, staff were released during the school day to have a coaching session every 4 weeks. And that was in a 3-form entry primary school. We modelled the Iris principles to discover and develop and share with the coach, but staff were not ready or confident enough to share their videos wider than with their coach at that point. Some staff preferred their coach to watch the lesson prior to the coaching session and add their comments and questions directly to the platform, while others preferred to watch it live in the moment with their coach and have that conversation where they both watch it for the first time. This then became a culture, but this is something that we needed to do in order to move teaching forward and leaders to evaluate the quality of teaching. So soon after, we had to develop the approach from one school and convert it to a model across the trust. So the first year across our trust started with schools being trained as coaches in the models and techniques that we were going to use. Each school nominated an Iris advocate who led the implementation of Iris and their coaching cycle in their school. And it was important to have advocates at this point. Not only was there somebody actively promoting the approach, but also some direct accountability for the implementation. And this was built into appraisal and on the school improvement plans. The brief was to use Iris to record teaching in an aspect of school improvement and provide coaching conversations to follow up and move staff further forward. Schools could choose their coaching model and their timetable, and they could also choose their focus. So some schools chose demonstration writing, reciprocal reading, the use of questioning to deepen understanding in lessons. And this made it low threat because it was led by the school. The advocates were in control. They were motivated and valued to use their expertise and their experience. And therefore, they built staff's confidence and established professional contracting so that people felt safe to record. The iceberg on the slide was the most important tool used for leaders to reflect on the views of staff. What was causing some staff to feel like they didn't want to engage in Iris and recording of their lessons? Reluctance of some staff to engage was underpinned by the number of factors, such as unsure where the video would be shared, who would see it, how the video would be used, and a misunderstanding of coaching and how the meetings would take place. After a meeting with the advocates, we explored the Triple D model, define, describe and demand, and we discussed the fact that they had not spent sufficient time describing, explicitly modelling and explaining what it would look like, what we would use it for, what the benefits were, what their concerns were, and therefore help them to move forward and really be in a position to be able to demand that this approach happened. By the end of the year, Matt Richardson, who works with Iris, we invited him to a showcase from each school, and he then offered additional advice on how each school could move forward with their approach. So we were now in a position where staff felt confident to record using Iris. They were familiar with the platform and how it was used. They were ready to evolve from this, starting from a trust, to codify the next stage. And this is where we got to. So we launched a codified approach across all schools that was consistent. All staff have a quality provision and all leaders have a model that will, over time, mitigate against ineffective teaching in our classrooms. We provided training for coaches. We had a clear launch across the whole of our multi-academy trust, so everybody heard the same message. We have a coaching timetable in every school that happens during the school day, so we're valuing and protecting that time. We have a code book for leaders. So we have a handbook that not only codifies the approach, it also defines, describes and demands what that approach should look like. The school improvement team, so the CEO and myself as Director of Education, we refer to this process in our school improvement visits, and we also evaluate the quality of teaching, looking at some of those outcomes that are shared from the leaders. In addition to that, staff who are not working at a proficient standard in the craft of teaching, we also link our teaching rubrics to add additional support to put in place for them. So as mentioned, teaching is complicated and we need to provide our staff with the tools and strategies to be the best that we can. Therefore, initially, we codified our approach to teaching through the creation of the Trust teaching rubrics, referencing the teaching walkthroughs to support the development of those teaching strategies. Verbal descriptions of teaching are often quite vague and require too much guessing, and asking teachers to watch others' videos sometimes contain too much irrelevant detail, which obscured the essentials that made the technique work. So therefore, we decided to use the walkthroughs because they use both words and static images, and their design was really based on clear decisions about what matters and what should be left out. As a result, they make teaching know-how as accessible as possible, and they shorten the route to understanding. And by making expert pedagogy clear and concise, they have developed classroom expertise in our trust. So every teacher in the organisation can improve through the walkthroughs. So as you can see here, we have a 5-week programme that we've implemented across our trust. In week 1, each school has one staff meeting every half term, and this introduces the walkthroughs that we may be focusing on that half term and allows time to present the materials, share, discuss the models and provide deliberate practice to role model what they would look like. Every member of staff has a copy of Volume 1, the walkthrough book, and they also have a teacher workbook that we have created and a coaching booklet that they will use when they attend their coaching sessions. In week 2, during day-to-day teaching, staff practice the focus of those walkthroughs. Leaders keep these live. They're displayed in the staff room and staff add post-its for good practice. On PPA day, leaders drop in and ask about the progress towards these, the strengths, the barriers, the solutions for these, and they keep the language live. During team meetings, walkthroughs are a short standing agenda item where staff can share their successes and be coached through barriers. In addition to that, staff meetings commence with a bring and brag, where key staff share golden nuggets linked to those walkthroughs. And there's a walkthrough that, if there's a walkthrough that's more difficult to master, leaders provide an opportunity for additional modelling and deliberate practice. As we move into week 3, that's when Iris then is used to record. So during week 3, staff record a lesson using Iris Connect and reflect on it by commenting directly onto the platform. During this week, staff record themselves modelling several of the walkthroughs that they have practiced. And the key here is their deliberate choice of those that they have chosen to model. And in the coaching session, they explore why they chose the ones they did and what impact that it had. After the recording, prior to the coaching meeting, staff then comment on the clip using the language from the walkthroughs. This allows time to review and reflect on their practice. It also means that staff go back to the 5 stages of walkthrough and evaluate their successes and what stages need further work. This thinking all commences before the coaching session, again, posing more support and challenge in a low threat environment. After recording prior to the coaching meeting, the coach may look at the recording before they meet with the teacher. They evaluate the comments that have been made while watching the lesson, and they consider the precise aspects that are not having a positive impact and those that are, and which aspects of the techniques are not yet happening or embedded. And then the coach has time to consider some lines of inquiry to explore. In week 4, this is when this is about the coachee. So this is when the coaching happens. So every member of staff receives their coaching during this week. The coach will listen to and learn from the coachee. So they will listen to clarify, assess, gauge and engage, and also deepen the understanding and skills of the coachee. They then respond to challenge, strengthen, deepen, but also to clarify. It's so important that the coachee sees their own teaching via iris, and that the coach, through effective questioning, allows them to see the gap between their practice and the practice modelled via the walkthrough. What's the difference between what we have learned via the walkthrough and what happened in this lesson? And then using the coaching booklet, the coachee captures their own notes, and staff set themselves I commit to statements and to provide themselves a real clear way forward to improve their practice, and then a follow-up date is then planned in. In week 5, that's the refine it. So coaching huddles take place, but while they're taking place, staff in the classroom are working on those I commit to statements. They're refining some of their practice and then moving further forward. Behind the scenes, leaders are engaging in coaching huddles, which take place in either week 4 or week 5 and are led by a senior leader in the school. All coaches attend this, and it provides supervision for coaches while offering collaborative support and professional development if needed. During this time, the coaches use staff on a page to capture the outcomes of the coaching linked to each walkthrough, and you can see an example there on the slide. The purpose of this is for leaders to evaluate the impact of the professional development. In addition to this, it identifies strengths of the school as well as staff who need support to improve further. It also identifies those staff who can share and lead good practice across our multi-academy trust. Teaching staff during week 5, like I said, will continue to practice the walkthroughs from the half term, refining their practice, and leaders will again continue to actively engage in this as they did in week 1 and 2 by joining PPA, standard agenda items and bring and brags. And by continuing this, continue to explore it, staff are less likely to default back to previous practice. So where next? So we're in a position now where we'll continue to use the trust teaching rubrics to self-assess. The staff use that to self-assess where they are. The rubrics then is cross-referenced with the walkthroughs. So we've got what are you struggling with, and the walkthroughs identified to how you can improve your practice in that area. So we will continue with that practice. We'll continue to build in strategies to bounce back and revise and overteach the walkthroughs, just like we would with the children. Building on schools deliberately selecting walkthroughs to address the weaknesses in pupils' learning in the classroom. So whatever's coming out of pupil progress, which walkthroughs can support and enhance the teaching in order to move that forward. And our next stage is research shows that in some instances, coaching is better in teams. And we are mindful that if someone doesn't engage, the softer accountability during group coaching may prevent them from engaging. However, we could explore the use of group coaching to share practice via iris and help develop the practice of others. So we're now in a position where we can ask staff who are proficient and who have exemplary practice in an aspect of teaching to share their walkthrough recordings to our Trust Iris group. Therefore, we're providing a bank of model practice of key teaching strategies and techniques that can be used to provide additional professional development for staff who need further support. So, hopefully, to summarise, that has really talked through our journey right from the beginning, how we embedded this coaching culture, which was important, introduced Iris in a no threat way where schools could choose. We had advocates there leading that, and how we've codified that across our all primary multi academy trusts. Has anybody got any questions?
Wow. Kate, I was totally blown away by that. Like the journey that your trust has been on is just absolutely incredible, isn't it? And kind of laying it out like that. I mean, what I loved is the fact that all staff at every level have been involved in being coached in, that because sometimes I go into schools and you might see the teachers engaging in coaching but not the teaching assistants or not the admin staff, or and we all know that schools are communities that are made up by lots of different people. I loved the fact that it was dialogic, it was facilitative, it wasn't a deficit model where, you were working presuming that everybody is a novice that needs filling up from the cup of an expert. And I loved bring and brag. Absolutely loved that. I'm definitely gonna steal that and use it for something else. We've had a couple of questions again. One of them, which I think is a really good question, and lots of people who are watching this and aren't Iris Connect customers may be thinking this themselves, is how actually do you encourage, and you did touch on this, those who are reticent to use video to actually go for it? What tangible stuff did you do?
I think to begin with, it was about them just recording themselves and not sharing it with anybody. So we
Yes.
had to get over the barrier of them seeing themselves on the screen. That's the key thing. What do I look like? What do I sound like? So what we did first, we got some of our more reluctant staff. They weren't sharing it with a coach. It was just them recording it, them reflecting on it, using the platform to reflect and use their comments. Then again, it's just about relationships. It's about establishing relationships, building relationships, then choosing their coach, somebody who they felt they wanted to be coached by, somebody
Mm.
they had professional respect, somebody that they wanted to be part of that process with, which again lowered some of those barriers. But I think it's just been really explicit that they are the only person who can share that video.
Yeah.
Nobody else can view that video at all. Because you know yourself, when you're teaching, you open yourself up, you're vulnerable because people are there to reflect. And that's where the culture and the relationships really comes in. And I think those that were reluctant, my key advice would be let them record themselves and reflect on themselves first.
Yeah.
Then allow them to choose their own coach, somebody who they feel they've got a good working relationship with, and just be really crystal clear and transparent about how you will use that information once they have recorded it, and that they can't share that information any wider. It's up to the coachee who they share that with.
Mm. It's empowering that, isn't it? Yeah, I love it. Thank you. I think I will leave it there because I'm very conscious of time, and we have got another two colleagues that are going to present to us. But thank you so much, Kate. I got so much out of that, and I know that everybody who was watching will have done too. Thank you.
Thank you.